Moving on to the next type of filter which is used in industrial scale is the rotary drum filter. As the name itself suggests, it consists of a drum which is rotatory in nature, and this drum basically acts like a sieve-like mechanism or with a sieve-like mechanism, and with one rotation of this drum one can allow it to dip into a slurry, sieve out the particles that need to be separated out, allow the cake to be dried, and then the cake can be dried out and scraped out at the end of one cycle. So this operates on the principle which is that of a sieve-like mechanism. Usually the dried cake is obtained or scraped out from this particular drum with the help of a knife which is present on one end. Now each dried cake is obtained after one cycle of rotation itself. So now, having understood the basic principle, let us now see how this particular instrument or apparatus is constructed. So as the name itself suggests, it consists of a drum which is cylindrical in nature and it is made up of metal. This drum is horizontally mounted, and the drum consists of specifications of about 3 meters in diameter, about 3.5 meters in length, and it gives a total surface area of 20 meters square. The curved surface basically consists of a perforated plate supporting a filter cloth. Internally, it is divided into two sectors, and a separate connection is basically made between each sector, and a separate rotary valve is also incorporated. Let us now look at the diagram of the rotary drum so that we can understand the construction points discussed a little better. Let us now look at the construction of a rotary drum filter or a rotary vacuum. As the name suggested, and as we have seen in the principle and construction, that it consists of a rotary drum which is horizontally mounted. So at the center in the horizontal, you will see the connection to a rotating zone. Now this cylindrical drum consists of a water washing zone which is present on top, a drying zone, a cake removal zone, a scraper knife, and a slurry trough. So this particular drum first drowns into the slurry trough. As you can see, the slurry is basically present at the bottom. So the sieve-like mechanism basically happens here. It consists of a filter cloth and a support through which slurry is dipped in and the solid particles are collected on the surface of this drum. From here, it is subjected to washing this particular surface which houses the particles of the slurry, and from there it moves on to the drying zone where the deposit or the cake that is deposited on the drum is dried out, and finally at the last end, before it undergoes the dipping into the slurry again, the dried out product is separated out with the help of a scraper knife. So in one cycle the filtration is carried out. The working basically is, firstly the slurry gets dipped, the cake deposition takes place, the drainage of the filtrate takes place after that, washing of the cake, drying and cake removal are the 5 steps under which this particular apparatus works. So the drum, as we have seen, is first dipped into the slurry and vacuum is applied at the outlet. So which is finally connected to the filtrate receiver. Now when the cake has been formed, the cake moves into the washing zone where it is washed with the help of water or a suitable solvent. Subsequently, it moves into the drying zone where a sufficient amount of hot air is supplied or applied onto the cake which is deposited onto this particular drum. And finally, the dried form of these particles or the cake are scraped out with the help of a doctor's knife. Sometimes when the solids in a slurry are a little too much, then the filter cloth tends to become clogged, and therefore filter aids are pre-coated onto the filter so that the clogging does not take place. The pre-coat of a filter aid is deposited on the drum prior to filtration processes also. So it could either be on the drum or it could also be onto the filter cloth. So with the understanding of its construction and working, let's now look at where is exactly this rotary drum filter used. The rotary drum filter for continuous operation of large slurries is one of its biggest use. It is especially used in the case of slurries which consists of solids of about 15 to 30% as well. The examples of pharmaceutical applications especially include the collection of calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate and starch. The separation of mycelium from the fermentation liquor in the manufacturing of antibiotics is another use where this particular rotary filter is used. Now, let us look at the advantages. The rotary drum filter is an automatic type of a filter and it is used for continuous operations. The labor costs of this particular filter are fairly low. The filter tends to have a large capacity, so it is suitable for the filtration of highly concentrated solutions as well. Variations in the speed of rotation also enables in controlling the cake thickness. Pre-coat or filter aid provision can also help in prevention of clogging, which is another advantage, and therefore it tends to have an increased filtration rate as opposed to many other apparatuses that we have discussed. The area, or it tends to have a large surface area as well because of the size of the drum. Now, having understood its advantages, we also have a few disadvantages that this particular instrument or apparatus houses. The first of which is that it is a sort of a complex piece of equipment, because in one cycle the filtration has to take place efficiently enough, because each cycle is of a very short span of period, and therefore the dried product also has to be collected out in this particular one cycle itself. So, because of its complex operation and it is a complex piece of equipment and it consists of many moving parts, and therefore it makes it a little expensive as well. In addition to the filter itself, we generally tend to have some accessories such as that of vacuum, or you tend to have receivers with vacuum in particular for a faster receival of the filtrate, and then you have slurry pumps, you have agitators that are required in addition to the instrument in itself, and therefore it adds on to the costing of this particular equipment. Apart from that, the cake also tends to crack due to the air that is drawn out through the vacuum system that is collecting the filtrate at the bottom. So therefore, sometimes the cracked cake can also be coming as a contaminant in the filtrate that we are trying to obtain. And also, being a vacuum type of a filter, the pressure difference is limited to 1 bar, and hot filtrates may sometimes even boil at that particular pressure. It is suitable for more or less a straightforward type of slurries. Let us look at the cross section of a Sweetland filter, which is nothing but a variation of filter leaf. So the main advantage of a Sweetland filter was that slurry can be introduced at a very high pressure as well, and a number of units can be attached in parallel. As you can see, the slurry enters through this particular filter and passes through to the top after filtration. The cake gets deposited onto the external layers and therefore it is collected at the bottom. So these are the outlets for the cake. The filtrate passes through the leaf and then unites at a channel to eventually collect out the filtrate at one end. All these filter leaves, which are arranged parallel to one another, are enclosed into a cylindrical vessel.